All righty, testing, testing. Can everybody hear me? How are
How
we
are we
doing
doing
today?
today?
Hey all, I can hear you. How's everyone?
Doing fantastic. Great to hear your voice, Hannah.
Finally, we can meet here.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I am actually very excited to have you up here. Been a long time, I guess, fan, if you will, of Guild. And I've actually chatted with, collabed with previously with some other folks. So it's just great to connect with you.
Likewise. Are you coming to Denver, by
Oh,
the
heck
way?
yeah. Heck yes.
Okay, then maybe we will see each other there also.
Oh, that'd be great. I'm inviting up to the stage one of my other collaborators, Donnie. He's been a longtime collaborator of mine on media and helped me co-host here these spaces. How are you doing, Donnie?
Quite well, Humpty. What's going on with you?
Oh, I'm doing good. It's good to see you up here again. It's been a minute. I know you've been really busy.
It's been an insane bunch of weeks in the middle of a career change and a geographic move, and it's starting to stabilize a little, but it's nowhere near done. I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, and then you're gonna throw East Denver in the mix, right? Because you're also coming.
And NFT Paris. I'm actually going directly from NFT Paris to ETH Denver, so I'm going to be out of whatever home I have at the moment. I'm going to be not there.
Wow.
There's no
Well,
such thing as home. Home is Earth.
you've only got yourself to blame.
Yeah, it's a choice. Nobody made me do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I mean, I don't think anybody who's in this space and does what they do is going to complain about it. I don't think it's definitely a choice, and but it's a very time consuming, full body experience. That's for sure. All right. I thought we might also have Polaris jumping up here. He's been a long time collaborator here as well on the ontology spaces, but we did change the time, so we normally host these 2 hours from now. So, and Polaris, for those of you who tune in and listen, and obviously know, he connects from different places from the world. I think the last time we talked, he was somewhere in the Middle East. I don't know. Did he say Pakistan? I don't know. You have to.
I feel like it's always Morocco, but he's been traveling to Pakistan a lot lately too, so it could be either.
Yeah, I think he did say Pakistan last time he tuned in, but I'll have to listen to the recording. But anyways, let's get started here because I think this conversation is a really good one. I would say if I was better organized, which that is definitely a goal for 2024, I would have said this is the second part of a four-part series exploring community tools, community building tools. Um, I made that choice after the last conversation I had last week, which was with Galaxy. And I said, you know what we're doing here is we're actually having conversations with builders from around the Web3 space that are building tools that make collaboration and community building fun, make it more simple. Because for those of us in the Web3 space that have been trying to build community, know that it's a little bit more complex for many reasons, not just the fact that we're so geographically distant, but also it's a more so digital native experience, and a lot of times we're using on-chain data as a way to just provide some sort of like use case primitives for people, but everything kind of can become a little disconnected very quickly. And so Guild, who we have here today, and I'll let Hannah introduce the project and kind of the different elements that make up Guild, but from my experience brings all of these very disconnected on-chain primitives together, and then they create a much more connected community. Hopefully, I've done a good job at like at very broad strokes describing Guild. But Hannah, why don't you introduce yourself and then introducing Guild and the platform?
Absolutely. I think you just You just made the perfect sentence. Like we're trying to connect the disconnected elements of communities. I would say that. First things first, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really honored to be here on behalf of Guild. My name is Hannah and I'm leading customer success at Guild XYZ. I joined the team over like 2 years ago or something like this, started in community management. So that's why I'm really excited to be here and talk about, everything that happened in these years. If I can just explain like what Guild is. Guild is a homepage and toolkit for on-chain communities. It's actually designed to automate token gating and membership management beyond across different applications. Our mission is to build full interoperability for communities between all their platforms for sharing, interaction, and collaboration. So I'm really excited to explore this topic with you guys.
That's amazing. I really love that kind of summary. I would say I remember when I first learned of Guild, which probably was around 2 years ago. Uh, it initially felt like it was a tool for aggregating communities using tokens. I remember that, but I feel like it's become so much more. And I hope that during this conversation, we kind of can see part of the growth, the evolution of Guild, but also some of the projections, kind of what we can expect from Guild in the future, because this whole space of Web3 is constantly changing. And a lot of it is because we have some really talented developers that are pushing the boundaries of what's possible, with cryptography, but also with smart contracts and, with open data, which the title that I put for this event is a bit borrowed both from some of the language from the Guild website, but also the last bit is something that I particularly am very interested in and building in as well. And that is creating portable memberships and social structures with open data. I think a lot of that you can kind of see directly on the Guild platform. So for those of you who are listening and want to check it out, you just go to guild.xyz. And you can just the homepage, you can see all these different communities that are being built there on the platform. But Hannah, if you wouldn't mind also giving me some insights in terms of either from your personal perspective or the conversations that are happening at Guild, how have you seen or how has Guild seen community management changing? We can start with like the last 5 years, but also you can, if you wanted to, maybe even segment that even further into from the moment Guild was launched through today. What are some of those changes that you've seen happening?
I love this question actually, and the entire topic. Actually, Guild has been around for almost 2 years now. We just got out of the alpha there, and as you also mentioned it earlier, we started with only token gating, and then we evolved into a more broader toolkit for the civil defense campaigns, bringing some analytics around. But just responding to your question, actually I started in 2020 the ERL community management, and then I just jumped into more specifically the on-chain community management only 2 years ago. So I can speak from my experiences, which is like a 2 year time period or something like this. But ever since, I've definitely seen some trends, rising and changes worth to mention. And I would start with one trend, or however you want to call it. But basically, when I got into the space, DAOs were really big. Everybody was all about DAOs, on-chain government, decentralized decision making, and so on. And I just want to say that feel free to just jump in and then just share me your thoughts also, because I think you have more, given your experiences. I'm also curious to hear your takes on it, actually. But actually it started what I've seen actually started with DAOs and decision making, and then we started to experiment with how we can move from tokens into different means of coordinations, because first tokens as a form of cooperation was mainly about ownership, voting, speaking about governance, and then we started shifting from this area in a way, and figuring out other means of coordination. For example, how we can do it in non-tokenized ways, like for example with allo lists, or let's say with other, different on-chain credentials, like based on digital on-chain identities and so on. And speaking about tokens and these things, I think that there were really big rise of social tokens also. Now, there are so many projects just mainly focusing on issuing these digital badges that shows you are, for example, part of a community or supporting a project. And it's not only about the ownership and governance. It's more like that. Like, for example, in our case, this is what we did with guild pins as soulbound tokens, like signaling belonging to communities, and just these things. I will stop here, and then if you have anything to add to it, I'm more than happy.
Yeah, no, that was very thorough. I'm also going to invite Donnie. If anytime something connects with you, triggers you, feel free to chime in. I sent you a message on Telegram, but I don't think you're reading them yet. So feel free to chime in anytime during the talk. I think you also have a lot of experience with community building with some of your own projects too. So would love to hear your perspective. Briefly, though, you touched on something that triggered me, a bit of PTSD. And that is, you talked about DAOs. No, you talked about DAOs, and you know where I'm going with this, right? Because you're right. Like 2 years ago.
Exactly.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, like, exactly. This is a word that can trigger some PTSD and these kind of things.
Absolutely. I mean, 2 years ago, I remember everyone wanted to make everything a DAO. And I was scratching my head. Okay, so one of these like anecdotes about myself is I can only understand something if I personally take a very deep dive into it. Like if I take hands-on experience and say, okay, how does this work? I could read documentation, I could read articles, I can look at my Twitter account and go through all the threads, but it only makes sense to me if I put my hands into the clay and start building with it myself. So I joined like 100 DAOs when DAOs were starting to, come up, when the DAO bull, if you will, was hot. And I was like, okay, and some of them were free. Some of them I had to get a token, buy into them. But, I just wanted to figure out what this DAO thing was. And almost as quickly as I jumped into like 100 DAOs, I jumped out of most of them. I would say I probably kept, a quarter of those memberships, because I was like, oh, okay, this group seems fun, or they seem to be talking about something that I'm interested in or learning about. But as I stuck around more and more into some of these, I started seeing some of the things that were just playing out, that like governance, for instance, that was just very hard. And the answer for many of them was like, well, it's all about token governance. You need to have one token, one vote systems in place. But then you started seeing other things like peek their ugly head around, which was, oh, whales have an outsized vote in these communities versus the people that are actually building them. So I thought that was like really interesting. And of course, now we are hearing, oh, we need to rethink the way that DAOs work, maybe change some of the things that we thought were right when it comes to token governance. So I'm really interested in this idea that you talk about, like, how can we use other signals that are not tokens in these communities to either prove someone's value or measure someone's impact, probably better said, and use that to organize them using a platform like Guild. And you talked about pins. So maybe this is a good way to introduce, what are pins? How do they work? Why are they important? And, really just how can they be a better way to connect communities and, to connect communities. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Actually, guild pins are our built-in reward types, which is basically a soulbound token and an NFT, which is signaling belonging to communities around, different guilds, right from the members' wallet addresses. So basically, imagine it like the easiest way to explain it is, if you just join a guild and then you want to express that, like, you are here early and then you support that community, you just go there and as a member you mint your pin, and then it's going to be in your wallet, across applications, anywhere you go. And this is what we wanted to achieve with that, to get a better like sense of belonging within the communities, and then just see that like how members align around shared goals. And I want to touch back on the cooperation, because you mentioned like, I would love to hear more about your experiences, by the way, with DAOs, and like what you think what it actually needs to to be more sticked for the future. If we are speaking of DAOs, like what is the essential thing that would keep them stay strong. But actually, speaking of cooperations, I think there are so many non-tokenized ways to just coordinate, communities. Even when, for example, beyond guild pins, we can talk about your on-chain identity or your internet history or anything. And this is what we want to enable with Guild, with the requirements that you can find your really strong subgroups within the community and then decide whether you want to build a strategy on them and you want to give them more abilities as a reward or something like this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you make a good point when you talk about like segmenting communities. I think that's the point you were making, at least. Apologies if I'm misunderstanding that. But I think it's good to think of communities, not as this monolithic group, meaning everybody is in a community is very much alike, like the person next to them, right? Like that everybody has the same interests, that everybody cares about the same things when it comes to why they joined this particular group of people, the things that they want to do, the things that they're skilled to do, what their financial situation is. For instance, like there are people who probably join communities to earn. What are their expectations? Like, it's really important to understand a lot of these different, I think, nuances between community members, because I think that if you have a clear understanding of this, you're able to provide each individual a unique experience, or at least as close to unique, because if we're segmenting groups, hopefully it's because they share similar interests and kind of skills and needs. If you can segment these groups of people into clear enough buckets, if you will, then you're able to provide them with a unique experience, a valuable experience. So it's really interesting to hear that with pins, you're able to create these subsets, right? Or segments of communities, so that you can hopefully optimize the way that you engage these groups of people or smaller groups of people and reward them as well.
100%. And also, like as you said, also like when it comes to community segmentation, there are so many on-chain and social data that we can leverage to identify like who's actually in my community. Like you as a builder will know that like, okay, what kind of events can I make for them, how can I activate them? And I think as a community leader, this is a really important thing that you have to pay attention to and have to consider on a really high level, like, okay, like how can you best provide value to each individuals and each subgroups within your community.
Yeah, Donnie, I'd love to hear from you, because I want to make sure that I make space for you. Now, if you can't speak or for some reason there's nothing you want to add, then that's okay. But I know that you yourself are leading some projects, particularly on the Bitcoin Ordinals community. Any of this resonating with you?
Oh, sorry. I keep on getting weird muted. Am I back? Can you hear me?
Yep, 100%.
I was doing that thing where it was like toggling the mute button on its own. I've been thinking, I think I took such a break from like trying to participate in DAOs and went over to Ordinals and have been getting really heavy into Bitcoin, well, I guess researching and partaking in Bitcoin development, that I've kind of forgotten that DAOs exist because there are no smart contracts on Bitcoin. So we were just engaging in, well, at least for now, there are not. It seems like there are a lot of things coming up where smart contracts will at least be peripherally available, if not available on like basically mainnet. But that's a talk for a different time. I remember, I'm just thinking back to all the times we talked about how when DAOs were like the thing, everybody was like, Well, okay, so we all have fans on our ceilings, right? Let's make fan DAO, and we all like sneakers. Let's make sneaker DAO, and just like throw a DAO at it. Throw a DAO at this, throw a DAO at that. Everybody had a DAO about a something, and I think you said that earlier on that you joined like 100 DAOs because we really want to explore that technology and see what problems it solves. But in the infancy of something like that, we really don't know what the applicability is until we screw it up a whole bunch of times. And eventually, like a year later, after the Dow boom, or 3 years, or however long you want to track that, you and I had a conversation where I like had this conspiracy theory that the global economy already is a Dow, and that we're just making microcosms of this already pre-existing structure and calling it something different as if it solves a different problem. And I don't know that it necessarily does, because like you were saying, when someone even with retroactive public goods funding, if you do more work, you get more tokens, right? And you deserve those tokens. So it'd be weird if you didn't get more tokens for doing more work. So in some strange way, it's like we want to reward people for doing stuff, but at the same time, we don't want the balance of power to be so far off that some people have like an undue, heft in the system. But like, how do we even fix that? I mean, I guess maybe this space is answering that question, and I'm just like kind of behind on it at the moment. But it seems to me that it's one of those problems that like if you do a lot of work, you ought to have a lot of reward or a lot of say or something like that. But at the same time, we're trying to balance so that it's not just like the Humpty DAO, because Humpty does all the work, Humpty gets all the reward. Now it's just Humpty's DAO. Where's the balance in between that? So I mean, those are like my preliminary thoughts and questions about traversing this space, but I have no specific questions for Guild at the moment because I'm still just trying to absorb it. By the way, Hannah, I will be also at ETH Denver, so maybe we can all hang out and talk shop in person.
Amazing. Let's sync up about that.
Yeah, by the way, just a bit of alpha here, and a lot of this is still kind of moving parts. So as you know, it's coordination is hard. I am chatting with a few folks on hosting a DID happy hour. And some of the invitees or some of the people that are going to be co-hosting would be familiar. I don't want to say too much because, I have soft commits right now, so I don't want to put any pressure unnecessarily on people. But there are a couple of folks that we've collaborated with on the past when it comes to decentralized identity. And I just think that this just is perfect for the conversation too, because we talk about digital natives, digital identity, internet native communities, and this is what Guild is about, obviously. So if this goes through, if I'm able to lock in everything, then I would love to have Guild there, and this might be a great way for all of us to connect in person, both Hannah, Donnie, myself, obviously, but anybody else who's been joining these conversations and the information that we share here resonates with you and you want to learn more, you want to meet the people that are building this stuff, that might be the best way to do it. So at ETH Denver, stay tuned. I'm sure Ontology is going to be tweeting something if this goes through, because they would be one of the hosts of the event. But with that said, Donnie, I thought what you said was very interesting, because you talked about like being busy building on Bitcoin, which is amazing in itself, because I wish I knew more about that space. And I think I've talked to you about this too, where I say, oh man, like I love that you like went deep into that, because that is a space that's so novel. There's a lot of things that are just being born there, which I think that's very exciting. But you said like, oh, I don't know if like community is necessarily as at least currently important to you, because there are no smart contracts on Bitcoin and maybe it's harder to build it. But I actually don't think that Guild would require maybe that, because there's still some data that's available that maybe Guild could integrate to be able to provide that group of people that are interested in something you're building there a kind of connectivity between themselves using some sort of asset. So it'd be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, like you said, Bitcoin is continuing to evolve. I've heard a lot about what's happening in the layer 2 development there, which then I think that might bring some smart contract support. So anyways, that's way too deep in that well, but still, I think.
Don't get me started, Humpty. I could do this for hours.
The laser eyes say everything. I think we know.
I've earned them.
You earned them. Absolutely. So to get back on track here, anyways, we're talking about some of these ways to connect people, the way that governor community management and development has been changing over the time, at least since Guild was introduced. Hannah, tell me a little bit about, because I read your documentation. I've obviously used your product. I'm interested to learn what some of this terminology is that we see on the Guild website. One of the things that it talks about is making access management for internet native groups easier using Guild. What particularly how would you define internet native groups as far as like Guild's point of view? And how is access management improved with Guild? Maybe we can start with that and then dive a little bit deeper too.
Yes, absolutely. Oh wow, you asked quite some things. I'm not even sure where to start, actually. Um, Let me just tell you, like, what is actually Guild and how we can connect it with internet native groups, like how we can, manage their accesses and so on. So basically, if someone is not familiar with Guild, like Guild's membership structure and the core principles can be described with like our 3R model. Like this is how we call it: the requirements, roles, and rewards. And then essentially communities can look up anything with Guild if the members have the keys, aka the requirements. So the requirements are the rules to qualify members for a role, and then the roles are the units that make up your entire guild. And then the rewards in guild terms is access to platforms, abilities, and as well as roles are rewards also. So actually, we just unlock this whole model for internet native groups with on-chain and off-chain, integrations and a lot of supported networks. So we can actually, bridge the Web 2 and Web 3 landscapes for the cooperation and collaboration that we've been just talking about.
That's fantastic. Could you give me a specific example in terms of some of the data that you support? Because I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, I know, just because I think that this connects so well with what you just said. And that is in terms of the blockchain data that could enable a, I guess, a better way to connect and level up with communities. What are some of these examples of blockchain data that Guild supports to be able to then allow for, I guess, this functionality between internet native groups?
Oh, yes. I don't even know where to start, actually, because, blockchain data is like such a powerful building block for on-chain communities. So I know that like when, communities actually realize its full potential, basically you have a full view on your members' on-chain identities, like what project they are supporting, involved in, and contributed to. And, it goes beyond like held assets. Like when you are using Guild, you can set like tokens and NFTs as requirements, but we can go, further. You can use contract queries, basically, like for example, for LP staking or different wallet actions. Like you can track your members' wallet ages, like which one was their first transaction, using setting up transaction counts, asset movements, and also like we've been talking about developers earlier. Like basically with Guild, you can check deployed smart contracts. So it's like there are so many possibilities that you can achieve with this. Like basically you can detect their shared interest. Like for example, if you're an ecosystem like rising projects in your community to partner with, so you will know that like who is the most valuable project around at the moment, so who I should partner with as a community and as a project. And also with the on-chain blockchain data, you can build a really heavy Sybil defense on these wallet activities, as well as like identifying your developers and power users, basically who's actually shaping your project. So there's a lot to share, like so exciting.
Yeah, thank you so much. Also, welcome, Polaris. I see you jumped in here just to kind of catch you up a bit. We're learning here about portable membership social structures with open data. And this is obviously a topic that has been growing in interest, but also in the space of like what we've been covering. And we have Hannah with Guild. So good to have you here. If you have any questions, anything that just connects with you, resonates with you, triggers you, as I was earlier when it came to DAOs, definitely we welcome you to jump in and share your thoughts. In the meantime, we can continue here. And so, we talked about some of the things that are supported. It's really great to see. One of the other reasons why for me this just such an interesting topic, and I think I've mentioned this before in previous spaces. I'm pretty sure I have. A couple of years ago, I guess 2 years ago now, just because we're at the beginning of 2024, I used to say last year, but I can't do that anymore. I, together with the ontology team, built a product called Orange Protocol. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, that's like a reputation protocol, and a credentialing platform, if you will. And we took open data to be able to identify, I guess, what the value or the impact was of contributions, and then issue those credentials off chain, allowing a layer of privacy between those actions and the reputation of that user. But we also, then took that and created an abstracted, primitive, which was then put on chain. None of that private data was included. There just was a connection between that off-chain primitive and the on-chain SPT, which was composable. And if I'm not mistaken, we actually integrated that with Guild. And so for me,
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
Oh, yes, we have.
Sweet. Yes. And I hope it's still there supported, because for me, that was always,
Of course.
Sorry?
Of course it is. We're still there, going strong together.
Amazing. Yeah, because the reason why I bring that up is I think that to me just shows the power of a platform like Guild. And that is in its ability to integrate almost any data, whether it's on chain or off chain. And I think that that's a super powerful piece of what Guild is building, but also a super powerful way of building products in the Web3 space, is that you have this ability of integrating, both traditionally off chain. I would say most of what the data that we're used to consuming in the Web2 space is off chain, but the much more novel data that's now available to us, which lives on chain, to create really dynamic experiences for users, and in this case, community members, in a much more, I guess, truer sense of the word when we talk about community. Polaris, I see your hand up. That's quite polite of you. Did you want to add something?
GM, everyone. Apologies. Like, I'm on different time zones and I'm going back next week to my normal time zone. So I was just showing a Twitter thread to one of my friends and I seen you guys communicating. So apologies for that. And welcome, Hannah. Hello, Humpty. Hello, Donnie. Hope everyone's having a fantastic time. And yeah, Gil, this is amazing. Like, this is something which we've been like really yearning to have. I've just got a few questions. Like, for example, like Discord has been a very bad in terms of Web3 integration. X, Discord, Telegram, all of these have been really. Uh, they haven't been Web3, very Web3 like in terms of ethos. You know, they have facilitated, these platforms have facilitated like building communities and building structures, and it's been fun. But moving forward, I think like we've always like realized that a need of on off chain integration onto these platforms, and eventually a complete merge of a new social platform which is literally working on social metrics based on blockchain rather than our normal web 2 approaches. I'm It's really, it's a breath of fresh air, I would say. Like and I'm looking forward to using Guild and seeing how secure the whole aspect is in terms of usability and in terms of security. That's something, if Hannah could just shed some light on those aspects, I would be really grateful. And yeah, good to see everyone. Good to hear your voice, Humpty and Donnie.
Yeah, great to hear you too.
Hey, it's pretty. Actually, just looping back to what you just said, I'm really glad you brought that up because when you were mentioning like Discord and Twitter, like this is when I got the PTSD, when it was like, okay, like API, just Twitter API. Just think about this, because one of the main challenges that we anticipate in, when developing Guild is ensuring the full compatibility between these different networks and especially like third party like social media platforms. And as we are aiming to reach up, more and more integrations, like managing these larger databases while relying on like multiple API sources, it holds a challenge. And actually like this is something that we are working on continuously to just build different solutions for that, to how we can get like more from the Discord API, like how we can get more out of it, like how we can ensure that like every single access check will actually be within the rate limits that we are facing with. Because I know that like it's really unfortunate that like we cannot like fully manage these on our end, because like if Twitter API says like no, then it's a no. And I actually like another challenge that I think when it comes to this place is how you are handling these API things. Because it's one thing that that like, okay, like I cannot do anything because we are rate limited, but it's another thing like how you are actually just passing this information to your users, like how you can make your product to the most user friendly way, if you know what I mean.
Interesting. So basically, we've got like an API connecting, giving all the information about a specific Discord and a specific user. And then from that, we are creating on-chain data based on the data you've received from Discord. And then that on-chain data can, depending on the intensity of that data and the viability of that data, goes on-chain and off-chain. And then the user can have an experience of the same social network, but on a Web3 environment. Is that the kind of stuff which we are trying to create here, or is it something which I'm completely taking in the wrong sense?
This is really interesting what you just said. I think we are moving to a different kind of aspect, because actually when we are we have this infrastructure behind Guild, which aggregates your connected social accounts, for example your Twitter, your Discord, everything that we are talking about. And actually we are aggregating this data into your Guild profile, and this is how we are verifying whether you're eligible to get a certain role or get access to a specific reward. But based on your off-chain data, we are currently not 100% like issuing these credentials or something. Like we have some ways to do that, but we are mostly validators in the on-chain identity space.
Yeah,
Makes sense. Thank you.
no,
Sorry,
no,
Hamdi.
no. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on everything that's being said here, because I think that this is another kind of key element of like what I believe what Guild is building, right? I shouldn't say that that's what they're building, because I can't speak for them, obviously. But one of these things that I did read while going through kind of your documentation and some of the other kind of like marketing copy that I've read is that Guild allows you to basically transition or reduce, I guess, some of these transition costs going from and between Web 2 to Web 3, right? I think that Hannah just eloquently just described one of these ways where that transition could be costly and difficult, and that is how can we take some of this impact that someone has contributed to a community, to a project on a Web2 platform like Discord or Twitter, and how can we leverage that to build better communities in Web3? And the first thing that came to my mind, and Hannah, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I thought decentralized social, because I've been taking a deeper dive into that space, I would say, in the last year, diving into Lens and probably more recently into like Farcaster. Really love what they're doing over there in terms of creating this more sufficiently decentralized protocol, as they call it. but there is this ability to take these primitives, right, that you create from Web2 data, and integrate that into like a Web3 ecosystem, a much more native Web3 ecosystem, to develop a stronger, much more connected community. What are your thoughts there, Hannah? I guess if there was a question there in terms of the ability to leverage Web2 data to build stronger communities and Web3 social, native Web3 social apps.
Before you answer, Hannah, I'm gonna add something on as well. Sorry, because I think that thing which I'm gonna add might make a bit will answer my question as well, because it's the same
It's
kind of
probably going to
vibe.
confuse us, Polaris. Just kidding. Giving you a hard time because you always throw a wrench into anything, but go for it, man.
So you know, POAPs, we used to like have these POAPs where we would have our Web2 interactions, and then we would have a Web3 like signage, which is a POAP, and you can like wear that POAP badge on your wallet. So like, you know, this is a dynamic POAP, or it's like a POAP on steroids, basically, and it's got all these different dynamic aspects to it, with all these different socials connecting to it, and only the major data from those socials going on and aggregated. And yes, that looks like a game changer, because we definitely need it. Hannah, go for it. Sorry about this.
No worries, no worries. Thank you so much for adding your points also. When we are speaking about like these Web2 walled gardens, and like how communities could actually reach their full potential if they are connecting Web2 and Web3 all together, like like communities function and live on multiple platforms, and there are these key challenges, I think, which we are really trying to solve with the guild model of requirements, rules, and rewards. One thing is the data portability and the interoperability issues, because like we are trying to make it more accessible both for as an individual and also as a community. Like, let me just add here, like when I think about like data portability, I always think about Disco XYZ, like how they are saying like they have the data backpack, and I think it's such a cool phrase and I love it. This is what I always think about, because like when like speaking about communities, like as a community builder, you want to take your entire community with you anywhere without the verification bottlenecks or the need to build a whole new community system from scratch on each of your platforms. And basically, this is what we try to enable, because when you have a guild set up and you have, a guild structure, which is like a chef kiss, you can actually take your community and the different subgroups within your community with you anywhere. So, for example, when we are aggregating these different data, as I mentioned earlier, the Twitter, Discord, and then connect it with your wallet addresses securely in your guild profile, we can ensure that like members can have like their full access to every single ability they have and all of their subgroups on each platform. Because like if we are not ensuring this fluid transition between these platforms, there is like community fragmentation, and we're going to lose that kind of network effect. It's like leaving a party and go to another one. Like, you don't want that. You want to stick to your party and then be with your friends, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear the Disco marketing already. You're talking about parties. I think what the team
Yeah.
I think what the team has done over there is actually really smart. One of the things in terms of like the space that they're building in, which is definitely also a space that Ontology is building in, and that's decentralized identity, verifiable credentials, data portability, all these things that we're talking about here right now too, are very complex, very, I would say, almost unfamiliar, especially for the on-chain, builders, because it just functions a bit differently. But I think Disco, I give them their flowers because they've done a tremendous job at changing, or at least adjusting people's perspective in terms of like the value and composability of off-chain data and privacy as well. So 100% agree with you there. And that just again goes to show some of the things that we can build on, some of these off-chain data Legos too, right? Because I think if we think about like the types of data that are currently used, that are more familiar, I guess, better said, are on-chain data, at least to the Web3 ecosystem. I would say traditionally speaking, maybe off-chain data is much more familiar to people who don't work in Web3. But in the Web3 ecosystem, these on-chain primitives are much more familiar, and I would say sometimes even more desired, for different reasons. But with that said, it's really good to see that Guild sees value and builds for, some of these off-chain data points to be able to provide, a seamless experience to users across different applications. So I guess looking now, putting our forward-looking glasses, or pulling out the old, what do they call it? The glass mirror, where you can see the future. What are some of the things, Hannah, in your perspective, that you see continuing to develop in the community management, community development space? I know we did a look back, a retrospective when we started. What are some of the things, based on the things that maybe Guild is building on, or the conversations that they're having with projects and communities, that you think that are interesting, that we can expect in the future from community building and tools that are being built around it?
That's a really interesting question, actually. I've been thinking about different projects or different partners I've been talking with. And actually, as we are trying to, shift more and more, trying to shift our narrative more and more from token gating into a full on homepage and a toolkit for these on-chain communities, I think there's a really big trend now and need of the projects to actually get a better, like, actionable insights on their communities. Like, it's one thing to know that, like, okay, like, who are my developers and so on, that you can actually reach, with your different roles and requirements. But I think more and more community realize that, like, the more the data they have on their specific members, the more, nurtured community connections they can create. And here I'm talking about, for example, analytics, or anything like a CRM kind of system or something like this. What are your takes on this?
Yeah, Polaris, any thoughts here? I'm happy to also add some other remarks after you. Or maybe no. Go ahead. Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, I certainly think that there's, I guess, different ways in which communities will continue to develop. I think one of the things I personally am very excited about is the role that decentralized social will continue to play in connecting communities. I think this point was made earlier in terms of, the I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Limitations of current Web2 social platforms, and both from their ability to organize people who are, guess, shared interests, values, through these social apps. I think that they're kind of like a big megaphone. They don't necessarily speak to anyone in particular. Sure, you can kind of filter some of that through the people you follow, but the algorithm's going to do what the algorithm's going to do. I really am interested in seeing more Web3 native applications being developed that leverage some of these segmented communities that are being built through Guild, right? Using pins and some of the other rewards then that the communities are able to obtain through this platform. So yeah, I mean, I think that's interesting. Obviously, I mean, if you look at my Twitter profile or my X profile, you'll see that I say that I'm an on-chain data enthusiast. I am always interested to see how data is continuing to play a role in the future of Web3. I think that there's still a lot to be desired. One of the best examples that I can give is airdrops, seem very rudimentary to this day, continue to be. Some of the models that I personally am a fan of, and I think Donnie mentioned this earlier, and that's retroactive funding. There's, I think, different data points that are available to us that show the impact of people and organizations, across the ecosystem, either individually or together. And I want to see more of this data being used to be able to capture the impact, but also reward it a bit more efficiently and equitably, right? And I think that Guild is going to play an instrumental role, in my opinion, in all of this, because it is an aggregator of this sentiment, is the way that I would probably put it, and maybe that's incorrect. But through all of these different integrations, you can build communities in aggregate, and I think that that is a very valuable tool. Any thoughts on that, Hannah?
100%. Actually, it just reminded me, or I just wanted to highlight that, like, we were speaking about like different trends. And currently, I would say that when it comes to, on-chain data, there's like a really big trend now coming up, which is basically points. And we can talk about the on-chain points also, because if we are just speaking about points in general, they are an amazing way to keep people engaged like long term, as they are like this tangible proof of reputation, and you can alter them over time to encourage like active participation in your community, just build more contribution, and nurture that organic growth around.
Oh, 100%. 100%. That's a trend, which is the point systems. It's interesting because, again, that goes back to that argument of off-chain and on-chain, right? And when we talk about credentials, when we talk about reputation, I know that that's an argument that's been around for a while, which is, should it be off-chain? Should it be on-chain? Points, same argument today. There are some of the pioneers of points in the Web3 ecosystem that are using them more traditionally, using off-chain, points, which the way that I see that, it just reminds me of a show that I grew up watching and that I still watch for nostalgia's sake, and that's Whose Line Is It Anyways, where it says the points don't matter, because they just get thrown around so arbitrarily, where it almost doesn't seem like it matters. Whereas you have on-chain points, right? Which I guess that's much more what we're used to seeing in the Web3 space, where there is some sort of asset that is shared, that is connected through some sort of campaign. And I would say matter just a little bit more because it's transparent. They're composable, right? You can build with these points. If someone's issuing points on chain and you think that those points are valuable, you can add them to your ecosystem. So it's permissionless, which I think is another huge, value point to Web3 technology. So I guess the only question left to be asked, Hannah, is, am I getting points using Guild, or when points on Guild?
Points are live on Guild.
Yes.
Actually, but it's an alpha actually, because we haven't really announced it yet, because we are still working on how we can do it in the best way possible with our closest partners and our biggest power users. So it's still in the making, but yeah, we actually created, like, let me just add it here, like, it's not only like Guild points. Basically, we are just giving you the points engine, and then you can build anything that you want. You can build your own point system at scale without just writing a single line of code. Like, you can say that, like, okay, let's just call it, Humpty, or let's call it Guild, or anything that you want to, and you can just set up a PFP for that. So basically, it's gonna be you fully matching your brand, I would say. So this is what the points engine is about. So you can put it on you can put the leaderboard on your website and so on. So we are just coming up. And by the way, I just wanted to add that, like, when we are talking about like points, like, a lot of communities, a lot of projects, we're just experimenting with it. And I just wanted to highlight that I think Rainbow did a really good job with points. I think their whole initiative and marketing is on top, like top notch.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think much of what we're doing right now is a bunch of experimentation anyways. It's when the experiments stop that I'm gonna leave, because honestly, the experimentation is what keeps the space innovative and fresh, and actually what pushes the boundaries. It's something that I mentioned earlier in the space, which was this space is very dynamic, constantly changing. because of all of the different experiments that are being run. There's a lot of innovation that's happening. So yeah, the point system, I don't think that there's necessarily a right or wrong answer at this point, but I want to see more experimentation. I want to see more composability and interoperability between these points. Maybe a bit of alpha. Maybe I'm building something in that regard. Just stay tuned if you want to learn more about that too. But certainly great to hear that Guild is continuing to innovate and continuing to experiment. So anything that we didn't cover that you think that we should definitely talk about here? I know you brought up points here, and that was a great little tidbit that we were missing on the conversation so far.
Well, that's a really good question, because actually I think we covered a lot of things, and I'm really grateful to be here and discuss all these things. Since points are controversial, as well as those, as well as the future of those, and all these spicy things. So I'm really glad we had the chance to talk about these. Like, on top of my head, like, I have nothing else. So if anyone has a question, just shoot in.
Yeah. That's great. I also agree. I think we covered so much ground here. And look, I love controversy. It keeps things fresh, keep things spicy. And if I love spicy, not just figuratively, but literally. So keep it spicy. Give us a couple of links here, Hannah, in terms of like where we can go next. If someone's listening to this and wants to continue to learn more or get in touch directly, where should they go?
Well, I'm going to be fully transparent here. I'm really, really bad with Twitter Spaces. So I have no clue how you can put the links here. So if you could help me out, I would really appreciate that. Actually, if I can, just let you know, like, where to go, it's the easiest. Like, if you just go to Guild XYZ and then you check the different communities that we have, and then, like, on top of that, if you just play around with it and create a guild, let's say a social club for yourself, for your friends, for your big community, like, we can meet there. We will be there. You can find us in the support. You can find us in our guild also. So if you're interested, like, learning more about Guild, just you will find everything on Guild XYZ.
Amazing. Yeah. And that's what I meant, is actually just share the links here, because we will be broadcasting, publishing this off the Crypto Sapiens platform. So if you want to learn more about that and the media we produce, you're more than welcome to click on my account here. Just go to cryptosapiens.xyz. We're probably also going to be doing a recap article there too. Stay tuned. Part 204, community building tools. This has been really fun, Hannah. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I cannot wait to meet you in real life at ETH Denver.
We'll do that. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was really great to meet you all, guys, and hear your thoughts on these different topics.
Great. Everybody have a fantastic day. And if I could emulate Polaris a little bit here, he would say, make sure you drink enough water, rest up, catch a little sun. I forget everything he says, but he has a beautiful outro. Thank you so much for everybody for joining us. And we'll be here next week on Thursday at our usual time, which is 1 p.m. or 12 p.m. PST. And I believe that's 1800 UTC. Have a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.